shortcuts. So we've touched on very briefly why we use shortcuts, because they are a shortcut. They make it quicker for you. They make your workflow quicker. And I remember when I was first watching tutorials and getting my learning on, as it were, for Premiere Pro, and I was always told time is money. And yet it is when you're doing this professionally. And something, say a cut, that would take maybe 1.5 to 2 seconds to do the Control and K, or going all the way up here, that only takes 2 seconds. But if you imagine in an edit, the edit that I showed you a while back, where there's so many cuts, you take that 1.5 to 2 seconds. Did I say minute? I meant seconds. 1.5 to 2 seconds, and multiply that out by every single cut you've done. If you were able to shave a second off that time, that saves you a lot of time. It speeds you up, and it gets the technicality out of the way so you can create. So you start to play the keyboard as if it were a piano. And I know that sounds very twee, and I don't mean it to sound as cliche as it does, but you get to a point where you're at you've got one hand on the keyboard, one hand on your mouse, and never the two come off the other. And it's just, honestly, it's like making music. So follow what I do and just do them now. All of these shortcuts, and I promise you it will help you in the future. So we go to Edit, right up at the top left, and let's go to Keyboard Shortcuts. So this brings up your keyboard. Now, rather than going all the way through here and trying to search for what we're going to be putting shortcuts on, let's just do it. Now, the first one that I want to change is this one here, because it's not actually by default. L by default, it changes the speed in which we play back. I don't work with that. It's not the way I work. I don't jog, which I do, but I jog and shuttle by dragging this playhead. Now you can play back, and L by design will play back at a faster speed. That doesn't suit my workflow, so I don't use it. And I have been tasked to do this to bring you along my journey and use my technique. So if you don't mind, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to change the L to link. I will explain some of these. I won't explain some of these. So if you search link here, and it used to be Control L to link. Let me just get rid of that. So here it was as default. So we go to link, and you scroll down, and it's clip link. In here is the shortcut. If you click to the side of it, it brings up that box where you can delete that shortcut, or just click to the side and it creates a new little box and type in what you want. That's what we want. We want L. Don't do anything else. We're just going to go away now, and we're going to carry on. Just to confirm, by the way, just in case you're wondering, that is there. But don't ever click cancel. Always click OK. I'd love an apply button here, just so I could bake that into myself. Okay, that's been done. If I don't do anything else, that's been applied. But it actually has been applied. It's applied by default. As you've done that, once you click out, and then you press OK to confirm it all. So let's move on to the next one, and it's that cut, and it's actually called add edit. So you type add, and there's edit. There it is. Add edit in a sequence. Add edit, and it's Control and K. We don't want that. So I'm going to click in here, and I'm going to click my button. Oh, I can't wait to bring this shortcut back. And I'm going to hit that, and that's backspace. As you see, it just added it to there as well, which actually, as I said before, isn't where it is on my keyboard. You can do whatever you like. If you have that button, assign it to that button. I don't use the zoom tool either. In fact, the amount of times I hit Z when I don't mean to, but yeah, I don't use the zoom tool either. So if you don't have backspace here, feel free, backslash, feel free to do the Z tool. But going through here, I will be saying just cut or split, and I will be using the backslash tool. That clear? Good. Right, next one, nest. This won't mean anything to you right now, but just do it. Nest, guess what I'm going to do? N. Done. I will explain these, I promise. One that's really important is enable. So enable, I'll explain that at some point as well. I know I'm repeating myself, but instead of Shift E, we're just going to do, no, we're not going to do E. We are going to do 0. I have a number pad to the right of my keyboard. I have this number pad and I always have 0. If you don't have 0 on here, you could always do this one, but this can also affect your multi-camera. So if I can make any suggestion with regards to what to use instead, I would keep just Shift E. It is using a modifier as in Shift, but I would just as easily also say /, if you want to. I don't use this. I've never used / to mark selection. Nah, I just don't do it. So I would do that. Did we do link? Yeah, we've done link. We've done everything. Oh, export frame. I'll explain this very, very shortly. But if you type in export, you want to come down to here and you want to look for frame, export frame, which is actually Control-Shift-C. And what I actually change that to is the letter C. If you look on here, C actually isn't anything by default. So I do it as C. I remember it, click in, C, thank you. I remember it as I'm taking a capture. I'm capturing something. So let me just very briefly show a couple of these. Hit OK, always hit OK. You can always come back to that, as you saw. You can always come back to it, and you can always dial in more shortcuts. There was one more shortcut. Yeah, there was. So I'm just highlighting exactly what I'm saying, and it's paste attributes. So if you search for paste attributes, it's Control-Shift-V. I change it to P. As you can see, nothing is by default in P. That doesn't mean that the version that you're using in the future doesn't have something there under P, but for right now it doesn't. And whether it was or it wasn't, I don't use it anyway. So I'm going to click into here, click to the side and type P, and that's now my paste attributes. That comes in very handy later down the way, and it's such a powerful tool is paste attributes. So okay, so what does all this mean? Okay, so I've shown you how easy it is to cut straight with the / button, or Z if you haven't got the / button. It's just so easy. The link, yeah, I don't want to show you a link yet. The export frame. So you see this is export frame. As you can see, if you mouse over certain ones of these, in fact that'll be the only one, brilliant, thanks, it will tell you what the shortcut is. Now as you can see there, it says Control-Shift+E is the shortcut. However, it's also included C because we've added that. Don't know why there isn't a comma before it. That should really default as comma, but that's on Adobe. But it does confirm that we have actually made C one of the shortcuts for that. Now what does that do? Well, if you're looking to get a thumbnail or a series of images from your footage, it's as easy as finding where you're at. I'm going to switch to full resolution just to be on the safe side. And I've just remembered another keyboard shortcut, and hit C. And what that does is it brings up this little dialog box. So we're asking for a name to save. We're asking for a format. Yours, I have no idea why Adobe do this, but their format defaults as BMP. Never want that, ever. Drop that down and put it at JPEG and never think about it again. And you could always do PNG, which is a slightly higher quality, but JPEG has never done me wrong. And then let's say fire, and you browse to where it's going. Now where mine's going is, remember we made up these? I have an images folder. Done. And I want to save that. Oh, it's just off the bottom there, sorry about that. Select that folder. Good. I want it fire, saving as a JPEG. That's where my save path is, and I import into project. Now it's up to you. You can import it into project if it's an image that you're then going to be using within here. There are times where you do need that, and we will cover that, but just as easy not to import into project, and okay. And nothing's happened. Has it not? Well, Now, if I'd have selected to import into project, that would have shown up here. But here it is right here. And this is just an image that we've exported. Now, if you're looking for somewhere in your video to get an image for a thumbnail to then take into another project and maybe put some text over it or something like that, that's the perfect way to do it. It's an easy way just to get an image. Or if you need the image for some other reason in the project, which we will cover in future chapters, that's the way to get your image, and then you import it into the project. But anyway, that's what that shortcut does. Now, to enable or disable, I use this a lot, but just to highlight very quickly how to use that, nothing is selected right here because I clicked into an empty space. But if I click on this and then hit the number pad 0, which is what I have for enable, it literally disables it and then brings it back. Now, there are times where you just want to delete that footage, but then there are times where you want to just disable it. And again, we will touch over that. Nesting, that's a little bit more advanced, which we will look into, as well as linking. But for here, I'm just glad that you have all your shortcuts in there. And I have my favorite shortcut, which is that lovely backslash to add that edit. Honestly, going forward, this will make things so much easier. So those are shortcuts. Can we have a little look at some more shortcuts? Yeah, let's, because there are a few other shortcuts as well as the cut, which I love, and that is ripple delete. Now, what is ripple delete? Let's move this bad boy over here. And to ripple delete, it's, well, I'll show you. I've done a cut there, and I'll do another cut here. Now, I want to delete this. Now, if I just have that selected and press delete, it removes it. But now I've got some blank space here in the sequence. Now, to ripple delete, if I Control and Z to undo that delete, and if I hold Shift and delete, it's deleted that and then closed up the space. That's called a ripple delete. But there's actually a step less that you need to do. Let me undo, undo, and undo, and undo again. Let's move that back down there. So here's this clip. And let's say we want to cut there and we want to come back in here. Rather than editing, cutting, I'm saying cutting, but you know what I mean. If I cut here and then delete that, there's a quicker way. And that's Q. And what Q does, if you look at your keyboard, you've got Q and you've got W. Oh, accidentally pressed it. Ruined it. Q and W work with opposite ends of the scale. So Q is delete everything to the left or before the playhead of that clip. So that will cut and delete and move everything up. That makes sense? If I use W, rather than deleting this portion and moving everything up, it will delete the portion to the right of the playhead and everything up. It won't close up this space because this space is still there within the timeline. But if I hit W, boom. So those are really good shortcuts to know as well. Q, W, and backslash. Now our backslash, which is add edit. Again, default is Control and K. No idea why that's a thing. I love this. I love, one of my favorite other shortcuts is the Alt key. So if you look at your keyboard, and Mac users, that's the Option key to the left of the space bar. Alt to the left of the space bar is an amazing modifier. Say I want to duplicate this. I could Control and C, then maybe over here and Control and V. So that's copy and paste. We know that from Word. So there it is, and there it is again. There's a quicker way to do that. And that is to highlight it, hold down the Alt or Option key on a Mac and drag. Keep your Alt selected and let go of your mouse button, and there is a duplicate. That works so well when you want to duplicate things above themselves. And there are reasons why you would want to do that. Again, we will cover that in the future, but that's really important. The Alt key is brilliant. It also overwrites. I'm mindful that I don't want to go too fast with this, but let's bring up our source monitor. And which clip was this? I'm going to right click and reveal in project, and it was this. Now let's say that we want to change that up. That was the in and out point that we had. I double clicked, opened it up in the source monitor, and that's the in and out that we have. So here to there is this clip. If we drag that, it should match up perfectly. It does. Let's say we want to change that, but say we're in a timeline and we don't want to move anything around. That's absolutely fine. Let's set a different in and out point. Let's clear this in and out point by right clicking and clear in and out. And let's select I there and let's set out there. Now, if I've done it too short, let's see how much that takes up. That's actually shorter than what we had. So if I grab this, just the video, remember, we're just grabbing the video, and hold down the Alt key and come over to that clip and let go. That's now replaced that footage with different footage. And because we had a longer clip than what we'd selected, it will just keep it in to keep it the exact same length as the clip we had in the timeline. Timeline will always override what was in the source monitor, purely because timeline is the main workspace. That makes sense? I think it does. I'm going to Control Z because I want that footage in there. Control Z again is undo. This is a really, I do this without even thinking. You see what I've just done there? I've clicked in there and it's highlighted that space. Let me click out again. This is another version of ripple delete, but this is a way to delete empty space. Now, if you've got a music track down here and you're running the video and you've left that blank space because something else is going to go in there, but you've edited to the beat and you want that in, well, you may want that space, or you may have something else that you're going to be putting in there. But if you've got blank space and you don't want it, of course you could grab this and you could pull it up and let go. By the way, if snapping isn't turned on, turn it on now. This snapping, as you can see, I'm moving things around and nothing is like, I'm moving freely. If I turn snapping on, watch this. You see how there's a little bit of play where it snaps to the end of things. I always want this on. This is a big deal to me. So I could move that up and snap it up against there. However, if I highlight that space and just press delete, that ripple deletes the space in between the clips. A really nice and easy way to get that where you want it without having to try and fine tune it, allowing this, let's bring it out here, allowing the snap to take it and then letting go, because you could quite as easily, if you're going quickly, that snapped, okay, that snapped, and let go. Oh yeah, I'd gone past the snap. So the easiest way to just get it all nice and clean, boom, done. And there you have nothing in between. Another shortcut which is really handy, which is actually by default, is the default transition. What is a transition? We are going to be touching on that very soon. But to apply a default transition is Shift and D. So D for default. How do we do that? How do we apply that? Well, you see how this mouse is changing, this cursor is changing what it is depending on where I have it. Well, this is giving me the dialogue to be able to shorten or lengthen the clip just by getting up to here. I need to explain this first before I talk about transitions. Just bear with me. So if you put your mouse or your cursor towards the end, and drag, click and drag, all of a sudden we can bring more in. Remember, anything we're doing in here, cutting, deleting, it's completely non-destructive. All the files are still here. It's just we're changing what parts of the files we want. You need to understand that it's non-destructive. So let's say that we're happy with where we have these two clips going against each other, but I want to apply a transition. I want to apply a crossfade, which is also known as a dissolve, a cross dissolve. Well, I go to Effects and I go to Video Effects. I go to Transition and I want I don't want any of those. I want a video. Where is it? You see, this is the problem. I'm never in here that much. Let's go for, it's a dissolve. So let's search for dissolve. This is so handy. Oh, it's video transitions, dissolve, cross dissolve. Now, have a look here. Firstly, I've searched for that. Anything that you know that is within Premiere Pro or anything that you don't know is in Premiere Pro, you can always search for it. It's so handy. Now, this blue box is really important because you will have two different blue boxes, one for video and one for audio. And what this tells me is that my default transition is a cross dissolve. My default video transition is a cross dissolve. What does that mean? That means when I use the shortcut for default transition, it will apply a cross dissolve. So there are two ways to apply this. Obviously, I'm going to show you the really long way and then going to show you how easy it is. Bearing in mind, to get to this point, we've had to first try and deep dive and find it, then we couldn't find it, then we clicked into here, searched dissolve, and now we've got it. So we can grab this with your left mouse button and drag it. Look at that. That now is between the two clips. You can easily put it on the end clip, which actually is a fade to black. You can put it at the beginning of a clip, which is a fade from black. Let me show you that. Let go. I want to get this playhead right back to the beginning. I'm just going to hit the shortcut home. Really easy. I could also have used up. What I mean by up? Well, this video 1 track is highlighted, which means that I can work my way along here without doing this. I'm somewhere right here. If I press up, it goes to the beginning of the current clip that I'm on. Now, if up goes back, down goes forward. So if I'm now here and I want to go to the end of this clip, effectively the beginning of the next clip, I press down. Brilliant. Same again, goes to the end of the next clip. If I had Alt drag, Alt drag, Alt drag, and Alt drag. Why have we done this? Well, let's activate V3, video 3, but let's not activate video 4. Okay? So let's just put into context what you've just been shown. So I'm just using the up and down arrows on the keyboard. If I press down, it goes to there. Now, if I press down again, will it go to here? No, it won't. It will go to the beginning of here because V2 is highlighted. So down goes right to the beginning of there. This is really handy when you need to move around. And I promise you, this, getting used to this and the shortcuts that work within a sequence, they speed you up so much, but it's understanding the basics of this first. So now at this point, we're at the beginning of the first clip on video 2. So if I press down again, where will it go? Will it go to the end of that clip? Will it go to the beginning of this clip? Will it go to the beginning of this clip? Well, if we see here, V1, V2, V3 are all highlighted. So what is the next end or beginning? It's this here. So it will go to there. If I press down again, it won't go to the end of this clip, even though it's highlighted. It won't go to the beginning of this clip. It will go to the beginning of this clip, even though it's not being read, because remember, we read from the top down, so anything on top will be read on here, but it's still reading it because it's activated, it's selected. If I press down again, go to there. Yeah, you know where we're going to here. Now if I press down again, will it go to the beginning of this clip on track 4? Have a think about it. And if not, where will it stop? I've just moved it up a little bit just to make sure. Yeah, you're right. It will not stop at the beginning of this clip. It will stop at the end of this clip. Watch. It won't read this because it's not highlighted. There are reasons why we would do this. Say we want to affect loads of these clips, but we don't want to affect some. Let's take off V1 and go back to the beginning. Now if I press down, it goes to the beginning of that track. It might be because all you wanted to do is search along a certain video track. It really helps, I promise you. So how do we apply a default transition? Well, first I'm going to highlight all these by drawing a marquee around it and just pressing delete. I've just got rid of those because I don't need them. I only duplicated them to show that. So control is another really important key on your keyboard. To control, I've never seen anyone show this, and it's something that I picked up on very early in my workflow. But if you go control, hold down control and then drag a marquee, all it does is it affects the ends of clips. Now if I let go, that's now highlighted those two clips, and Adobe now knows that I want to concentrate on the split between these two clips. I do, because I want to apply a default transition, the cross dissolve. Now if I didn't highlight those, you saw before, I just dragged and highlighted over here. Now if I put it right at the beginning, it will just fade in from black. If I put it at the end, it will fade to black and then just bring in that second clip. I want to cross dissolve between the two. It's a bit of a fine balance with your mouse. Obviously if you zoomed in it'd be a little bit easier, but as you're about to see, you will never do this. I've let go, and I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option on the Mac and zoom in by scrolling up my mouse wheel. And here we have a cross dissolve. What does that mean? Well, if I highlight it and go to Effects Control, you can see what it means. It's going to cross between A and B. A is the first one, B is the second one. That's right here. If I tilde this so you can see it a little bit better. This is actually showing the cross point between clip 1 and clip 2. A being Pizza Oven 1, B being Pizza Oven 2. Now that's because they're from two different clips of footage, but it could easily be Pizza Oven 1 and Pizza Oven 1 as well, just a different part within it. Don't really need to understand that, but what you can see right now is you actually have both clips on the screen at this point. That's because it's right in the middle of this default transition. Let's bring this back a little bit and press play by hitting the space button. Space button? Space bar. Cross dissolve. Right there. Now let's Control and Z to get rid of that cross dissolve, and let's do it much quicker. Hold down Control, draw that marquee, let go, and Shift D. Done. And you can do it even quicker. Let's just press up. See what we did there? We went up to put where we want this to be, and Shift D. Didn't work. Why didn't it work? Because nothing, the ends weren't selected. You don't always have to do the ends. You can highlight them all and then apply the default transition. But the reason why we do a Control and drag, because as you can see, it's applied a cross dissolve on there as well. So what it will do is it will apply the default transition to all ends of all clips selected. We don't want that. We don't want that at all. Let's just show that again. Or by the way, to delete, you just select the cross dissolve, select the transition that's in place, and just press delete. Don't ever be frightened of pressing delete. Anyway, let's highlight these both again by drawing the marquee tool, which is purely just drawing a square around it like you would in Finder or Windows Explorer to select files. And Shift D, again, default transition, default transition, default transition. Now you may want that, but we don't want that right now. Control Z to undo that, and hold down Control, and now we're just highlighting the join that we want to affect with the default transition. Let go of the mouse button, let go on Control. You can see that's what we're talking about. We're looking at this bit right here between the two. Shift and D, it just applies that default transition to there. Now you can change the default time of the default transition. You can do that really easily by going to Edit, Preferences, and going down to Playback. And what this does, no, completely wrong, Timeline. So the video transition default duration right now is 10 frames. Now we have this at 25 frames a second, remember? So that means that it's under a second. Now you can change that. You can change it to be, say, 25 frames. Highlight that, 25, press OK. It won't affect things that are already in, but it will affect everything you do after. You see how that's a longer transition? It's a much bigger cross dissolve. But there's a reason why I don't do that, and I don't have it that long. Because you can affect the time of the default transition or any transition once it's in. Let me just go back and change that to where it was. It was 10 frames, right? I'm just going to put that back. In fact, we're going to come back in here in a second. But yeah, let's just do one thing at once. The reason why I leave it at 10 frames, see what I just did then? I'm going a bit fast, sorry. Control, drag it over, and Shift and D. The reason why is because you can easily make a transition longer or shorter. You really need to pay attention to what your cursor is doing depending on where you are. Remember, this changed depending on the ends of the clip? Well, we can do the same with a transition. See how that mouse has changed? And there we go. So it's telling you when the cross dissolve starts and when the cross dissolve ends, and the duration of it, 10 frames. Well, you can make it longer by just literally dragging it and dragging it out. Look how long we can make it. I mean, seriously, you can make it as long as you want. That's almost the longest dissolve in cinematography history. Look, you can make that as long as you want. I mean, that could be the look that you're going for. In fact, I've seen a number of documentaries that have things like that. So leaving it at 10 frames is perfect for me, because I think just a nice quick cross dissolve if you ever need it. Boom, done. In fact, that's too long. Yeah, that's 10 frames, that's why. Just nice, boom, you're straight in. I do a lot of beauty. A number of our clients are beauty industry companies, and a nice quick 10 frame cross dissolve is more than enough. Now, obviously, that's not the only transition you have. I mean, just in dissolves alone, there are loads. You can do dip to white. Dip to white is a good one. Again, because it's not the default, you have to grab it and drop it in. But you can change. Say you want dip to white as your default. You could right click and set selected to default transition. I don't know why I can't read. As default transition. And just like that, it changes it, the blue box around it, to that default transition. I don't want to do that. I'm going to change that before I forget. But dip to white is exactly what it says on the tin. If you ever seen any documentaries and someone's being interviewed and they cut them up, the industry standard is to dip to white, because what it does is it says, I'm cutting, I'm taking them out of context, but I'm making sure that you're aware that it's been a cut. It's not just a jagged cut. If you've never seen that or never been aware of it, I promise you, you will see that from now on. By the way, you may be seeing certain artifacts on my screen, and that is like, it's almost like a screen tearing. Watch, you should see horizontal lines here. Oh, maybe not now. Make a liar of me, why don't you? Cross this off, maybe. Let's do a dip to black. I just want to highlight, so... Ah, you see there? Just... No. When I play full speed, you see there's some horizontal lines going along here. And it gets better the more times I play it through. It's just called screen tearing, and it's not the final output. It's a bug that is currently going on with my graphics processor. I have a very powerful NVIDIA graphics card, but for some reason on playback it does those horizontal lines, but it's never in the final edit. I don't actually see it anymore because I know that it's not going to be there in the final edit. So if you are seeing horizontal lines in your own stuff, depending on the calibration and the setup of your system, don't worry about it. More often, well, the screen tearing will not be there in the final edit. So that's keyboard shortcuts. I know we went off a little bit with transitions, but this is a whole thing that we're going to be talking about very shortly. Your keyboard shortcuts can speed up your workflow just immeasurably, and we will be using them pretty much from here on in.